When we talk about self-sufficiency, we talk about feeding ourselves, feeding our families, making sure our family doesn't have to go to bed hungry because of the food that we have in our garden. Corn has to be on that list. It's a staple in so many countries because of the nutritional content, the fiber content, just how healthy it is, and an all-around powerful meal that can make sure that you never really need to go to the supermarket because you can just eat corn and be full. Hello everyone, thank you all so much for joining in. This is Dylan from the Trinidad channel and I'm super excited for this video. I can't tell you how long I've wanted to do this video, but the rains didn't allow me to film and just other factors. But we're here today and we're going to be talking about growing corn 100% organic, super simple, easy and affordable. You can grow corn in containers in a raised bed directly into the ground if you are able to. I would generally recommend that you grow it either in a raised bed or directly into the ground, simply because if you grow corn in a container, you end up having to use a lot more soil than you probably would have used if you had just amended the soil in the ground or had soil in a raised bed. So like for instance, just having like one big container with just one simple corn tree might not be the best utilization of soil. But of course, if you don't have that luxury of having ground for a raised bed or to grow directly into the ground, then of course by all means you can grow corn in a container itself. Now that'll bring me to the next point, which is regarding the spacing of your corn. Corn generally doesn't have well, there are two things here to consider when it comes to your spacing. Corn doesn't have very deep roots. That's one of the reasons why farmers will tell you that when there's high winds or a storm blows in or whatever the case is, many of the corn trees tend to fall over. That's why the spacing is generally really close, right? A lot closer than you'd think for a plant that grows almost, this is probably like 7-8 feet tall. The reason for that and the reason for having them so close is that when they fall over, if they fall over, they'll fall onto corn that's next to them, a tree that's next to them, and there's a higher chance that they'll brace one another and then sort of make like a block so that they don't fall all the way over and then get uprooted. All right, they fall over easily because their roots are not very deep. So when it comes to spacing, we're looking at anywhere between 6 inches and 12 inches, no more than that for corn. The second reason, because I mentioned there were two reasons for this really close spacing. The second reason for having this close spacing is regarding pollination. Now, pollination is really important with corn. Now, if you have a look here at this corn tree, right? We basically have the tassel at the very top. Hopefully you can see me here. We basically have the tassel, right? All of these are tassels, okay? And then we have the corn itself. Now this one is not done very well because of how long I left it. But there is the corn silk, all right? Each of these silk, if you come in closely, the silk itself goes back to a kernel. So these still get pollinated by the tassels, and that's what produces your nice cob of corn. Now, we are very fortunate in Trinidad to be able to grow corn year round because we have the perfect temperature, the perfect weather for corn. I've heard some superstitions about, you can't really grow corn in the wet season. It's more of a crop season, the first 6 months of the year kind of crop. All of that, it's old-fashioned, it's traditional thinking. You can have corn whenever you want. If you live in the Caribbean, you live in Latin America for the most part, where temperatures stay at least 25 degrees Celsius and above, you can have corn. If you live somewhere temperate, then you want to make sure that you put corn for the hottest part of the year for you in your growing season. But in Trinidad, we can have it year round. You can have corn in your garden all the time. Now, corn is a kind of plant that really enjoys having nice fertile land that's not too heavy in clay content. So you want to be amending your soil with at least some compost if you can't grow in pure compost to make sure and break up any clumps that you have in your soil, because the roots in corn, they're quite thin, so they do need to be able to penetrate the soil fairly easily. Now, going back to the topic of corn being grown in places that are generally hot, like in the Caribbean, like in Trinidad, you want to make sure that your corn gets the maximum amount of sunlight that you can possibly give it. So you're aiming for 8 to 10 hours of sunlight. If that's impossible, then you can probably give it less, but it's not going to help your corn. It's going to make it grow sometimes even stunted because it doesn't have that energy from the big leaves. The reason why corn has these long, thick, broad leaves is to capture the sunlight and to capture those photons for photosynthesis. If the corn doesn't have access to the light from the sun, then it's not going to grow very well. Another very important point is that you may have noticed sometimes people plant corn somewhere near to where you have like a street light, some kind of artificial light, and that's going all night long. And the corn trees tend to get really, really tall, and sometimes the cobs are not going to form really well. The reason for that is that all plants, not just corn, but all plants, the majority of your vegetable garden, they need to rest just like we need to rest as humans. So basically, if they have light all the time, they have light in the daytime and in the nighttime, then they will spend all of their energy growing, and they get exhausted growing, and they put all of their emphasis on growing. And because they're focusing on just growing up and up and up, they're not focusing on fruit and the vegetable production that you are growing them for. So you want to try and avoid having your plants planted where you have too much artificial light. Like if there's a stadium nearby, or if you're unfortunate and you have a lot of city lights nearby, by all means still grow your corn, but just know that if you can put it somewhere where you at least it can get shaded from that artificial light in the nighttime, that would be to the benefit of your cornfield or your little corn garden. Now, when it comes to planting your corn itself, you can either grow from seed or you can grow from seedlings. Either way is completely fine. The only difference is that if you are using seeds, I would recommend that you pre-soak them, just because that gives you a higher chance of having a higher germination rate. Not that you can't just put it in the ground and water it and it'll be fine. It's just that if you soak your corn maybe like 8 to 24 hours beforehand, you'll generally find that it'll come out of the ground faster than if you were to just put it into the ground itself. Okay, so let's see how we're going to plant our corn. I'm going to show you how to use it seeds, and also if you were using seedlings. So we're going to dig a very small, shallow hole, right? And today we're planting from seed. Okay, so as you can see here, this is probably around this about ½ an inch of soil, right? Here are my seeds. And in each hole, I'm going to put in 3. Right now, I'm not going to have 3 plants grow up here. What I'll actually be doing is that this is just a guarantee that I do get a plant to come up here. So if one seed doesn't go, then hopefully the other germinates, or the other germinates as well. And if I see 3 shoots coming up, then I'll pull out 1 or pull out 2, so that I only have 1 here. But this is just to make sure that each hole has at least a plant. And I'm just gently covering this over, right? And then you just water in your seeds and you're good to go. That's if I'm doing seeds. Now, if I was planting seedlings, I would dig a little deeper hole. Let's say just about an inch deep. Right? I don't want to plant my seedlings too deep. Right? I don't actually have seedlings right now, but in theory, you would just put your bulb of root of your seedling inside here. And before you put your seedling, you would put a little bit of this. So this is worm castings or any kind of animal manure. So you'd put that around here. Okay, and then you could use some organic fertilizer. This is the garden tone that I use. It doesn't have to be this is very optional. And you'd put those fertilizer inside of the hole itself, put your seedling, mound it up, just like that, water it in, and that's how you'd plant it if it was seedlings. When it comes to watering your corn, you want to make sure that your corn never has to go through the heat stress of being completely dried out. So make sure that the soil is always nice and evenly moist. Deep watering, don't flood it, don't put it somewhere where it's going to be waterlogged, because as always that's going to cause root rot to happen with your corn. And because the roots of the corn are so shallow compared to other trees like like a bygone or peppers, even tomatoes, they tend to rot faster. So if you have your corn, try to put it somewhere where if the rain does come and it's torrential sort of rain, that water fairly quickly will dissipate. Otherwise, find a different location or try to raise your growing medium like in a raised bed, or even revert to containers. That's also going to help with that situation. And the last thing is fertilization. Now, corn is a grass, believe it or not. Now, we know it as corn, you grow it for the food, but in essence, this is just a grass that just naturally would grow as a grass. And the corn itself is just a byproduct of that grass. The same way how you see other fruits, sometimes inedible, growing all over the forest, and they have fruits that you don't know if you can eat or not. That's kind of what happened with corn. And at some point, we realized that you can eat the byproduct of the grass, which is corn, and that's how we got into corn itself. So You want to make sure, because it is a grass, to feed it with nitrogen, things that are going to be high and strong in nitrogen. Now, of course, in our organic methods, we're going to be using things like, and of course, I invite you to go and look at my video on NPK and to understand what the organic fertilizers are. But in a nutshell, for your nitrogen, you're going to want to put things like worm casting, your animal manure that's well composted. If it's chicken manure, at least 3 months composted. If it's something like cow manure, at least 2 months composted. These are not rules set in stone. This is just from my personal experience with this kind of animal manure. But those things are going to give your corn a nice boost of the nitrogen over time. A slow fertilizer that's going to help your corn grow nice and big and strong and do really well for you. And that's how simple it is to grow your own organic corn right at home and to support yourself and your family with food for generations to come. Remember, if you know someone who could benefit from this information, share this video with them and show them how easy it is to grow this wonderful staple crop that can feed themselves and their family. Remember as well to follow us on Instagram and now on TikTok, so that you can see what's going on in the Trinidad Gardener's garden and share what's going on in your garden with us. We're always happy when people send us messages and pictures of what they're growing, or maybe even questions that you might have. We always respond and we're happy to help. Remember, as always, this has been Dylan from the Trinidad Gardener channel, reminding you to get up and get growing. Take care.